The thing with Zootopia 2 is it's not just providing general commentary on the redlining that took place after the New Deal, which I'll make a separate video on, but it's telling a very specific story, and that is the story of Seneca Village, which was the first community of free Black Americans in New York City. It was stolen and torn down to make way for Central Park. To tell this story, there will be general spoilers for Zootopia 2, so if you don't want that, scroll away now. In the story, we go back to 1825 and a 25-year-old African-American man named Andrew Williams. For $125, Andrew would purchase 3 lots that would represent the foundational piece of Seneca Village. Same day, Epiphany Davis of the AME Zion Church would purchase 12 lots for $578. In 1832, 24 lots belonged to African-American landowners. In 1827, slavery had been outlawed in New York, and around that time, the community really started to grow. In 1855, we're talking about 52 homes, with a third of the population being Irish, as there was a great influx of Irish immigrants as they were fleeing the genocide that was imposed on them by the British through starvation. Key to this particular community was that over 50% of the African-American population in 1850 were landowners. It was exceptionally important because in 1821, New York had passed a law saying that African-American men could only vote if they had lived in the state for 3 years and owned $250 of property. To give you a sense of what that looked like in 1845, there were about 13,000 Black New Yorkers, and between 90 and 100 had the right to vote, and over 10% of them were from this small little village. In 1855, this was a very religious, tight-knit community with 3 churches and 2 schools. All this being said, as the 1840s rolled along, there was something being planned, and it was called Central Park. And like William Cullen Bryant, planning this park knew they had to start figuring out a way to take this land. It started years before any physical acquisition, and it started through propaganda. So they started talking about the residents of Seneca Village as vagabonds and scoundrels. They called them wretched and debased. They called them thieves and squatters who could barely speak English. They referred to them as insects. Now in 1853, they began the process of legally stealing this land, and in 1857, the city would claim eminent domain. In September of 1857, they would send in the police to physically remove anyone that was left, and then the entire community would be demolished. Landowners were compensated for their land, but by all accounts, that compensation was nowhere near fair, and it was not optional. Just like it was shown in Zootopia 2 with the town being covered in snow, this community was basically forgotten. They tried to write it out of history and move on until it was sort of rediscovered in the 80s and became a hot topic of conversation in the 1990s. There's no movie that I'm aware of that tells the story of Seneca Village. I think there's a great movie to be made that focuses on the story of Andrew Williams, the man who bought that first parcel of land. This being said, I think Zootopia 2 was a great reminder of this history and the way that the narrative is always controlled by those in power. If you'd like to hear a much cheerier, full breakdown of Zootopia 2, we were joined on Goodwill Podcasting by the Escape Pod. Alex was with us for the first half, had both the guys for the back half. It was a lot of fun. We also got into a little bit of Stranger Things, a little bit of James Cameron's Avatar. Really fun conversation. Episode is now live all of these places. If you enjoy my stuff, please go give it a listen.